Hello, welcome to the booth. Brian David Marshall, joined by Ian Duke, newly elected Hall of Famer Eric Froelich, and we are ready to watch our third quarterfinal. Let's get right down to the floor. Hello and welcome to the third quarterfinal match here at Pro Tour Magic Origins in Vancouver. I'm Brian David Marshall, joined by Ian Duke and Eric Froelich, and we are watching Paul Jackson of Australia. He's going to be the World Magic Cup national champion from Australia, facing off against Stefan Berrios from the United States, Chicago specifically. Someone who's been playing for a while and is having his big breakthrough moment on the Pro Tour. Ian, what's this matchup look like?
Well, game one, as was said, can be pretty rough for Paul Jackson. He's playing the sort of green-red devotion deck. He's got a lot of big green ground creatures that he's going to try to accelerate into, but he doesn't have much creature removal and can't deal very well with flying creatures, so he's going to be really scared of something like, you know, an Ornithopter plus Ensoul Artifact or a Thopter plus Ensoul Artifact.
Okay, Eric, we're not seeing that kind of explosive opening out of this deck that you're used to seeing from Stefan Berrios. What does that mean here? What's going on in terms of the cards in his hand?
That means his draw is probably really bad. I mean, this deck is kind of chock full of 0, 1, and 2 mana spells. Not having any of them is a really tough spot to be in. It means you can't Ensoul anything. It means you can't accelerate with a Springleaf Drum. It means you're putting no pressure on your opponent, so they're able to play their mana creatures and start deploying their big threats while you're not doing anything. And it probably means you're not going to win.
Yeah, no third land for Berrios. Paul Jackson has played a Sylvan Caryatid on turn 2, and he is looking through his hand, trying to figure out what to do here. I know that both these players are very excited and a little bit nervous to be here.
Yeah, it looks like Paul Jackson missing his third land drop, but still getting to play. I presume that's a Rattleclaw Mystic.
Yeah, it was a Rattleclaw Mystic.
Yeah,
face down.
So he'll still be able to play something pretty large and explosive on the following turn, and it'll be up to Stefan Berrios to see if he can get some aggression going in time.
Looks like he's going to be on the Phyrexian Revoker, equipped with Ghostfire Blade beatdown plan.
Well, Revoker is a really powerful card in this matchup just because it gets to shut down a mana creature. You know, Jackson just missed a land drop. Now his Sylvan Caryatid, I assume, is not going to be able to tap for mana. So set him back just one more mana. That's basically what you're looking to do. And it looks like Paul Jackson just drew another Sylvan Caryatid. So.
See, unmorphs. The Rattleclaw Mystic. Plays Xenagos, the Reveler.
You have to announce this trigger? I said add mana. Right, with the tap ability. Yeah, tapping it for amount.
Named Sylvan Caryatid.
So add 2 mana.
Plays another Rattleclaw Mystic with the
Berrios
mana
tries
off
to get him.
He's like, can I get you here?
Yeah, that doesn't work in Pro Tours or Friday Night Magic. So.
All right, Ghostfire Blade goes on the Phyrexian Revoker. Revoker gets into the red zone.
You're up.
Jackson opts to jump block with the Sylvan Caryatid, given that it's turned off by the Revoker.
Well, what that did was actually still cost him a mana. He has Xenagos in play. He would have been able to just plus Xenagos and play Dragonlord of Tarket this turn.
There's a Courser of Crufix. There's Nissa. The Vastwood Seer goes and gets his third land.
Well, this Dragonlord of Target is going to come down eventually, and it's going to be really good.
Eventually is not very far away.
Let's take a look at Berrios' hand here. Looks like he's somewhat clogged on expensive cards.
I assume he does not have a Shivan Reef in hand.
Yeah, that Shivan Reef has long since been played. It's got a couple of Thopter Engineers, the Pia and Kieran Nalar.
But here it looks like an island off the top, so he'll at least be able to play, say, a Thopter Engineer this turn.
He will be able to play a spell this turn, but it will not be an 8/8 flying trampler that deals 5 damage when it comes into play. And so Paul Jackson's next turn will probably be the superior one.
Yes, in the head-to-head matchup between Thopter Engineer and Dragonlord Atarka.
This one goes at...
Stefan's thinking about
Xenagos, this one at you.
attacks the Phyrexian Revoker at Xenagos
This is at you.
and sends 1 damage in the direction of Paul Jackson in the air. Of course, his artifact creatures have haste from the Thopter Engineer. And Paul Jackson pushes the Courser of Krufix and the Vastwood Seer in front of the 4-power Phyrexian Revoker, and Courser gets in there, gets
Don't flip
to
the
the
top
front of the
card.
line.
You don't have that in play.
Yeah, sorry.
Whoops.
So there's no other effect. Okay, so you reveal a card that you shouldn't. So this is looking at extra cards. This means I have to give you a warning penalty. Okay, and we will shuffle this card so that you don't have extra info. Shuffle it, present it to your opponent.
Yeah, I could tell from talking to Paul last night and this morning. There's definitely some nerves in play for him.
So just to explain what happened there, he had lost his Courser of Krufix in combat the previous turn, but sort of spaced it out and ended up revealing his next card as though it were still in play. The judge ruled that looking at extra cards, that's a warning. He shuffles his library and the game continues.
In the meantime, there's Dragonlord Atarka.
Hello, hello.
Kills them, does 1 to him. With the Revoker gone, he gets to play another Courser, using the mana from the Caryatid, and gets in for 2 with the Vastwood Seer. So you've played this blue-red artifact deck, Eric. Is there any way out of this?
No, absolutely not. Although I was expecting Berrios to continue playing it out. It looks like he's clearly on tilt, but he was looking to try to rack up additional warnings, trying to say you didn't add mana from your Rattleclaw Mystic is a bit of a stretch, but you can't flip for your Courser. A little bit of nerves there from Steven Jackson.
All right, well, we'll be back in a minute after these quick messages.
Ultra Pro is the place to go for all your Magic accessories. With card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios showing off the best Magic art, Ultra Pro is the standard in safe storage. Visit ultrapro.com for more information. Put your game to the test at a Grand Prix. These open tournaments feature the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros from around the world. Upcoming Grand Prix events include Hong Kong, San Diego, London, Detroit, Santiago, and Prague. Visit magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix for a complete schedule.
All right, we're back, and these players, of course, are playing best 2 out of 3. And you're not stuck playing the same 60 cards that you played in game 1. Sometimes you have some cards that aren't great in the matchup. We talked to both of these players before the quarterfinals started about what their sideboard strategies were going to be. So let's hear from them about what they're going to be doing right now. All right, I'm here with Paul Jackson. Paul, tell me what the plan is for game 2 in this matchup.
So what I'm going to be doing is bringing in the 2 Arbor Colossus. The draws that they have with Ensoul Artifact are just really, really hard to deal with, and that helps out a lot. And just is a big blocker, and it really helps stall the ground. And also, I'm going to be bringing in the 3 Gnarlies this Slapple. It's a very aggressive matchup, and the life gain will help out a lot. And unfortunately, I think that's all I have.
You know what you're going to take out to make room for those 5 cards?
Yeah, I've been trying different things, but I think I'm going to take out the Whisperwoods and 1 Xenagos. Whisperwood's just too slow, and it just doesn't have good impact. So I think I'm going to try that.
Okay, well, there you have it. Paul Jackson, good games the rest of the way in the top 8.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm here with Stefan Berrios. Stefan, what is the plan for game 2? What are you going to do with these cards to shore up your matchup?
Well, obviously Disdainful Stroke is really good in this matchup. One of the only ways they can interact with you is by resolving an Atarka on turn 4 or 5. So holding up a Disdainful Stroke there helps you out a lot. Other than that, we don't really have much. I kind of think the matchup is pretty good, so I didn't overstock my sideboard. We tried Active Treason, but they're bringing in Nylea's Disciples, so when you Active Treason the Atarka, 8 sometimes isn't enough to kill them. So we abandoned that plan. And then we thought red was going to be big, so I used those last 2 slots that were the active treasons on these Tomb of the Dragon Spirit, or Spirit Dragons rather. And yeah, so I'm just going to bring in the Disdainful Strokes for some of the 4-drops that are a little bit slower.
And what do you take out to make room for those 3 cards?
Well, some combination of Pia and the Whirler Rogues. I think Pia's a little bit worse than Whirler Rogue. They both have some merit to them in that if you land a Pia and they attack you, you still have a couple of pieces left over and you can throw it at their head. And Whirler Rogue can get through an Ensoul, but some combination of those 4 drops, and then I'm going to bring in those Disdainful Strokes.
Excellent. All right, Stefan, good luck the rest of the way in the
Thank
top
you.
8. All right, so there, you've heard their plans. Eric Froelich, how do you think this matchup changes after sideboarding?
The matchup changes pretty dramatically in Paul's favor. Not to say that he's favored, but Stefan's Game 1 matchup is really good. I really liked our deck's Game 1 matchup for the blue-red artifacts, and we had 4 Stubborn Denials main, which is not a card that's good in this matchup, so we were a little bit weaker than some of the other artifact decks to be stronger against everything that wasn't Green Devotion. But
all right, well, let's see how it plays out here in Game 2 as we are ready to get underway. Okay, Temple for Stefan Berrios. He scries.
Pretty nice opening hand from Jackson here. I mean, turn 1 Elvish Mystic is always what you want to see in these green decks. And then from there, he can go either into Rattleclaw Mystic or Courser, make sure he hits his land drops. We'll see on the flip side if Stefan Berrios can start off with a strong, aggressive start, hopefully much stronger than what he had last game.
it looks like he has turn 1 Ornithopter into turn 2 Ensoul Artifact, so already a lot better than last game.
Yeah, that's like exactly what he wants to start with, right?
It is, but Elvish Mystic is the most important card to try to get out of that. Might not
And
be
there
enough.
you go. Ensoul Artifact, Ornithopter becomes a 5/5 and attacks in the air over the Mystic. So this is a very aggressive clock here for the blue-red. This is the incentive to play the deck, right? This is the
This is the
Ensoul.
payoff.
Yeah.
So Paul Jackson's going to want to find either a route into playing Dragon Lord Atarka as soon as possible, or perhaps finding one of his 2 Arbor Colossuses that he brought in. Those are his main 2 ways of defending himself against flying creatures. Other than that, he can buy a little bit of time with life gain, but he will have to answer that Ornithopter at some point.
Okay. Plays a Temple, scries, and then a Rattleclaw Mystic face up. But he is at 10 after this attack from the Ensoul Artifact. There's Revoker.
Wow, Revoker shutting down a mana creature is huge here, especially since we at home know Stefan Berrios has a copy of Shrapnel Blast in his hand. So one more attack with that Ornithopter into Shrapnel Blast will be lethal unless Paul Jackson can find a way to gain life or deal with that Ornithopter.
Here's Xenagos. Makes a Satyr.
And that's going to do it.
That should be the game unless something very unusual happens here.
Sharpen blast you.
Yep, attack you, shrapnel blast
Kaboom.
you. And we are going to game 3 just like that. It's really a, would you say, turn 4 kill combo deck in general, Eric Froelich?
That's what you're looking to do. I mean, when we first built this deck, that was, how a lot of people viewed it. A very all-in deck, a lot of aces and a lot of deuces. But it really isn't that. That's not really the case, is that a lot of the cards play out very well together. Chief of the Foundry is not a very powerful card, but, it does combine well with Ornithopters and Thopter tokens flying around to actually deal some reasonable damage. And Ghostfire Blade is actually incredibly powerful.
Yeah, not a card we've really seen show up in any of the other opportunities it's had in Standard, but with all these Thopter tokens and Ornithopters running around, it has a nice place to land.
Yeah, totally. It's just such a cheap threat. It can be ensouled itself, and then it turns your Ornithopter into just actually a decent clock. 2 points a turn doesn't sound like a lot, but it really adds up quickly, especially when you sometimes just get a one-shot in with Ensoul where it's turning into its Shrapnel Blast in itself, and then Shrapnel Blast, of course. And cards like Whirler Rogue, just putting in multiple Thopters, make something unblockable, deal 3 damage, and force them to deal with a bunch of threats. It's just a lot to deal with.
And speaking of multiple Thopters, Ian Duke, talk about one of the breakout cards from this tournament, the Hangerback Walker. This is a card that's seeing play in everything from the Ensoul Artifact decks to the control decks to basically many different decks in between. What's the story with this card from an R&D perspective?
Oh, Hangerback Walker's, its hallmark is its flexibility, really. I mean, you can see X in its casting cost is something that we'll often find on really flexible cards. And what's great about this is it goes in a lot of decks. Obviously, there's a lot of synergy in the artifact deck, it being an artifact and producing more Thopter tokens itself. But it's actually just a really solid 2-drop. We've seen everything from green-white aggro to Obzon aggro, just a variety of decks employing this in a format that's starved for cheap, efficient early drops. This is something that's great on turn 2 and also great later on in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I see, there in the bullet points, they reference Chronometon. I mean, what's really nice about, Chronometon was awesome, but, you'd invest all this time and energy into it in Limited, and then someone would kill it, and you wouldn't have anything. But this, you get a really nice payoff off this card if someone actually has to deal with it somehow.
That's right. It's like a Chronometon that you're not afraid to invest time and mana into.
Eric, what was your experience with this card like in the tournament?
This card's fantastic. Actually, up until Thursday night, the night before the Pro Tour, we had collateral damage in our deck. And the combination with Hangerback Walker is just huge because you're able to play this thing in combat. They might play a combat trick to make the thing bigger. You can then pump it, sacrifice it, and then you have just a huge team of creatures to then attack them back next turn. Combination with Shrapnel Blast, it's just so much damage, sometimes out of nowhere. This thing just has to be answered. There's a few good answers in Standard right now, Abzan Charm, of course, being the most prominent one, but even Abzan Charm is just a 1-for-1 with this thing, and most times you're getting 2 or 3 for 1, and it's just tough to beat. It's also really strong against the red decks, where you can just play it on turn 2, trade with the Foundry Street Denizen, have another blocker to deal with a Lightning Berserker, another Denizen. So really powerful card, really like this one.
Yeah, we will have an opportunity to see Hangerback Walker collateral damage in our last quarterfinal. You might have some mixed feelings about seeing that resolve, Eric.
Just a few.
But meanwhile, players are resolving their mulligans. And then we're going to be getting right down to the action for Game 3 as soon as they're ready. There you get a look at the overhead shot.
Greg, we're stuck on Berrios' hand. Has it been updated in 12 minutes?
All right. It looks like we're underway with a scry from Paul Jackson. It looks like he started on 6 cards. Both players are starting on 6. So there's a Temple of Abandon. Scry pushed it. There you get a look at Stephen Berrios. Pretty big opener here in terms of being able to play some cards. Springleaf Drum, a couple of Ornithopters, and a Darksteel Citadel.
Now, Eric, what do you make of this hand on Berrios' part here? He's got some starts of things going on here, but not really anything cohesive.
Yeah, it's not exciting. He's got a Thopter Engineer that the Springleaf Drum can help accelerate, but he didn't have a come into play untapped land. So, even that 1 point of damage that the Thopter would have dealt, it's not a lot, and he can't get that on board right away. I do like most hands that have Scry lands. It feels like there's a lot of great draws that you can generally have in this deck. You're looking for Ensoul, Hangerback Walker, a lot of good cards potentially. And Phyrexian Revoker is actually an all-star in this matchup that you're looking to find, but
yeah,
this is a slow draw.
Name's Rattleclaw Mystic, but there's a carry added for Paul Jackson.
I can see how the Revoker is so excellent here. It's basically like a 2-mana 2/1 that enters the battlefield and Stone Rains your opponent, which is like amazing.
The colorless Avalanche Riders.
Yeah.
Well, there's a Shrapnel Blast. Still no Ensoul Artifact. Another Springleaf Drum. Plays the Thopter Engineer, gets in for 1 with a Thopter token.
So Berrios with plenty of permanence on the board, but not actually a lot of pressure going on here.
And Paul Jackson has a little bit of party goers in his hand that he can't get rid of. He's got both Xenagos the Revelers.
Yeah, none of his big cards. He'd be looking to resolve something huge next turn would basically be optimal.
Right, we know he brought in like Arbor Colossus, which seems like it might be excellent here.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good card in the matchup.
He is going to play.
And Xenagos.
Puts a Satyr token into play.
So he's gotten to the point where he
No,
has
oh,
his
no,
mana.
sorry. I'm sorry. You made mana and played another Caryatid. My bad.
2 copies of Shrapnel Blast in Berrios' hand. So Jackson at a virtual 8 or at 7 after the Thopter attacks this turn.
Shrapnel Blast not a good draw, but definitely better than than a lot of the draws still.
He's probably looking to pick up an Ensoul Artifact as soon as possible.
He's really looking for a Chief Egg with all these, you know.
Oh, great
he's got
point.
a Thopter. The, you know, Revoker can at least attack past a Caryatid, at least trade with the Rattleclaw Mystic if he wants, and a couple Ornithopters can come through. Ensoul is, of course, fantastic. Whirler Rogue puts a few threats into play. They'll have haste. Pia and Kieran will do the same thing.
Meanwhile, he's just sending everybody in who has power.
Even Hangerback Walker you could put down for 1 and pump right away because of the Springleaf Drums and the Thopter Engineer.
Now, what do you make of offering the trade from the Revoker to the Rattleclaw Mystic here? I mean, the Revoker's already sort of taking care of the Rattleclaw's mana production and could potentially stop future Rattleclaws.
Well, it's only taking care of half the Rattleclaw's mana production because Xenagos is in play.
Oh, that's a great point.
So Shrapnel Blast is
He's deciding what to sacrifice here.
taking
This is
out
pretty great
Xenagos.
news for Paul Jackson with the second Xenagos in hand.
absolutely.
Wow. That looks like Dragon Lord Atarka, right?
Okay, it's time for another copy of Xenagos the Reveler. Decides this time to make the Satyr. He's really trying to think about, does he want to get his attack on, or if he wanted to, maybe he was thinking about getting his, is there any benefit to getting the Xenagos up to 4 here?
No.
Okay.
Actually, yes. Ghostfire Blade.
And that's
Wow.
exactly what comes off the top here for Stefan Berrios.
That's a huge draw. This prevents Dragon Lord Atarka from coming out next turn, right?
Well, barring a land.
Sure.
But yes.
Prevents
that's
the
a very big
guaranteed Dragon Lord Atarka.
Absolutely. I mean, he had Shrapnel Blast in hand. He could have used a second copy the same way he did the first. But yeah, that is just a great draw.
Thopter gets in for 3. Little Springleaf Drum shenanigans is able to move the Ghostfire Blade over to the untapped Ornithopter.
Looks like a Genesis Hydra for 4. That's not terrible.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he's going to play.
A lot of good hits here. Courser's good. Another Xenagos is good. Pelucranos is pretty good. Even Nylea's Disciple is pretty good.
Nylea's Disciple would feel a little backbreaking here, actually.
All right,
But
there's
Xenagos is the play. You hear Stefan Berrios saying a third Xenagos. Oh.
So do you tick up here just to
you
prevent it
have
from
to.
being killed by the Ornithopter?
You have to, yeah. Again, a lot of draws Berrios has that can finish this off. Anything that makes a Thopter, another Ghostfire Blade, and Ensoul Artifact. He already has the Shrapnel Blast. He could draw Revoker and name Xenagos. So a lot of things will take care of this, and he has the Shrapnel Blast. But Paul Jackson's 1 mana away from just casting the Artarka without Xenagos.
Last card in your hand's a Tarka? Is that accurate? I don't know. So yes.
It looks like it, right?
So last card in your hand's a Tarka. Maybe. He's like, so yes. Stefan has a Shrapnel Blast and 1 unknown card that we haven't seen what he drew yet. Jackson, of course, does have Dragon Lord Atarka and more than enough mana to cast it next turn.
So, Eric, if you're Berrios here and you just drew a land, are you Shrapnel Blasting the Xenagos and taking the chance that Jackson doesn't draw an untapped land next turn, or what's your game plan from here?
Your game plan is you're in rough shape. Like this is tough because yeah, you probably want to kill the Xenagos. The thing is, it's not doing anything if you don't have Dragonlord Atarka, and it's probably not going to do much if they do because you're not going to be able to do nearly enough damage in time if they draw an untapped land. So part of me would want to just cross my fingers and save the Shrapnel Blast to deal 5 to his face and hope that I'm able to draw, let's say, a Whirler Rogue to deal a few damage and draw a second copy of Shrapnel Blast, which of course is the third copy at this point because there's one in the graveyard. But it's one of those really tough spots. Like, what he hopes to draw is Disdainful Stroke. This can counter Dragonlord Atarka, allow him to keep pressure up, and potentially win the game with the Shrapnel Blast. If he just drew a blank, you probably have to Shrapnel Blast the Xenagos, but you're in a position where you're just not winning.
And we already know, based on the banter between the two players, that Berrios assumes Jackson has the Atarka in his hand. He may, as you said, just cross his fingers and hope that that's not the case, but really, really tough spot.
The problem is you have to then hope that your opponent just draws Dragonlord Atarkas every turn because all the cards in the deck make mana or are huge threats. Like, you're not beating any of that. And so it's just a really tough spot if you just drew a complete blank.
Hang 'em high.
All right, he has a Hangerback Walker. That's the unknown card.
Oh, Dragonlord's coming down.
Paul Jackson's counting to Atarka.
He may have drawn another spell he can actually cast first. Yep, Pelucranos into Atarka. Even better.
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Green, 7.
Yep, and there's the 7th mana. There's Dragonlord Atarka. Is there anything in Berrios' deck that can fight through a dragon?
3, 4, 5.
Not well. What he can draw, let's see.
Yeah, 3 on 1.
He's kind of short on mana to even be able to cast, let's say, a Whirler Rogue, equip Ghostfire Blade, get in for 4, and then hope to draw another Shrapnel Blast. He doesn't have the mana to do that even, so no. Not right now.
So
He's still at 20.
Right. Dragonlord's taking out the Thopter Engineer, a Thopter, and... Okay.
Like, if he had another land, he could potentially cast Whirler Rogue, equip Hangerback Walker, make it unblockable, attack for 4, put Jackson within range of 2 Shrapnel Blasts.
Right.
But he doesn't have that much mana.
Haste from the Thopter Engineer lets him put a counter on the Hangerback Walker. If I know how magic works, he drew a Disdainful Stroke this turn.
Or a basic island.
Yeah. Oh, okay, there you go.
And the door closing quickly here for Stefan Berrios.
Yeah, the Disdainful Stroke ended up, it wouldn't have been enough. The Pelucranos itself is just going to do so much. And just wipe the board itself. Dragonlord Atarka is just the 8/8 flying trampler that is making things look quite a bit worse. Although I guess Shrapnel Blast could have dealt with Pelucranos. So if he did have Disdainful Stroke to counter Atarka, he would have been in a tough spot because Jackson led on Pelucranos. He would have had to let that resolve. He could counter the Dragonlord Atarka, Shrapnel Blast the Pelucranos in response, and probably still lost, but at least had a game.
Yeah, you see now that Paul Jackson's lining up a huge Pelucranos activation.
Yeah, which is going to get Shrapnel Blasted.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16. 16.
Okay.
I'm going to Pelucranos, no stress for...
You have 16 floating, you said?
Yep. So I'm going to do 4, 5, 6. So 4 here, 2 here. Which is
4 here and 2 here?
2. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 5 in gold. 6, 4, doing currently 6. Still 5.
I said he had 16 mana. Yeah. He's going to use 13 of it. He thinks he has, so he should have 3 mana left.
4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12.
13, so you have 3 floating?
3 floating, so 3 3 green mana. So,
There's not a situation where Stefan can't Shrapnel Blast the Pelucranos here, is there?
No. I mean, it's also just going to be an 11/11. If this resolves, he will be forced to take lethal damage from the other creatures. But Paul Jackson actually never drew a sideboard card or saw one off the Genesis Hydro. Is still able to take this down.
Yeah, broke serve. Stefan broke it back. But here, Pelucranos, Xenagos, and Dragonlord Tarka are just too much. He's letting it resolve.
What he's hoping for is that he'll get attacked. He can block with Hangerback Walker, pump it to make it a 3/3, Shrapnel Blast, Paul Jackson down to 9, equip one of the creatures with Ghostfire Blade to attack him down to 5, and could draw another Shrapnel Blast.
Wow.
That's the hope. So all Paul Jackson has to do here is just not attack basically with the 8/8 flyer, and the game's over. Unless he has a card in hand and maybe has a Nihilist Disciple or Arbor Colossus, but it doesn't look like it. Unless I think this is also just lethal damage, right? With he has the Satyr token. Yeah. Okay, so he has to block Pelucranos. It's going to be more than 14 damage, so he's going to have to use the Shrapnel Blast to actually take out a creature, and that will end the game. Yeah, the Pelucranos staying in play as an 11/11 means it just has to be blocked. He could pump Hangerback Walker, Shrapnel Blast,
I was just gonna say,
Jackson down to 9, but he doesn't have. He's one blocker short of being able to pull this off.
Can he chump block with 2?
Right, if he chump block with 2 and equips 1, he can only attack Jackson down to 6. And he would need to chump block with 2. If he could chump block with 1, he'd be okay to potentially draw the 2-outer, but
The 2-outer being his 3rd and 4th Shrapnel Blast.
more Shrapnel Blast, yeah. When you're behind, you go to the Shrapnel Blast plan.
So Shrapnel blasts Paul down to 9.
If there were more creatures, Shrapnel Blast could also be replaced by Ensoul Artifact as, an extra way to deal a bunch of extra damage, but Paul just had too much life.
Chumps the Genesis Hydra and the Pelucranos. Goes to 3.
There's
Cards
the
the turn.
Staple
Yeah,
Strike.
and there's the hand. Paul Jackson will advance to the semifinals. Stefan Berrios has been turned aside. Green-Red Devotion, the old standby from Standard, has taken down the new hotness of Blue-Red Artifacts.
Definitely the underdog in that matchup, especially game 1. So impressive display from Jackson there.
Yeah, he broke serve. Very much. He, even talking to him, did not expect that game 1 was going to be very favorable for him. But he definitely liked his sideboard plan.
And if Mike Sigrist is able to win his quarterfinal matchup, he'll get to face it again. But this time he gets to win the role. He'll be the higher seed.
So welcome back to the booth. There we saw our third quarterfinal. We have one left to go. Mike Sigrist playing against
Kentaro Yamamoto.
Kentaro Yamamoto. We haven't seen Kentaro Yamamoto. This is definitely the reason it's saved for last. Kentaro Yamamoto, of course, the top seed throughout the tournament. But we'll be back with that as soon as we're done getting the area turned around, and we're going to send it back to the news desk and Marshall Sutcliffe.
Yep, Marshall is here at the news desk getting ready to interview Sam Pardy in just a couple of minutes. Luis, we did see some of what the Ensoul Artifact deck gets to do. We saw it once do crazy stuff, but they only did it once out of 3.
Yeah, that's kind of what the deck does. It's what you signed up for, and the draws are pretty wildly variant.
I wanted to ask you as a team, 2011 World Championship San Francisco, you all arrived packing tempered steel and obviously put up phenomenal numbers. Was there a sort of feeling of a similar sense when you were sort of gravitating towards this deck?
I don't think anyone thought it was as good as Tempered Steel was that year. We actually played it at 2 different Pro Tours that year.
Right.
But people are pretty excited. Anytime you get to play a completely new deck in a standard format, it's awesome.
Were you surprised that other people had it too? Because it felt to us like there were maybe 2 or 3 groups of players who had a new thing and felt that with a bit of luck, they might be the only people with that new thing.
We did not expect to be the only ones playing it.
Right.
It was not surprising. I mean, Ensoul Artifact is such a powerful card, and Hangerback Walker is such an obviously good card that the combination of those is something we expected other people to get to.
Okay, so why don't we take a look at our top 8 bracket? We're closing in on the end of the quarterfinals. 3 have been done. Where have you been? 1 is still to come. We began the morning down at the bottom of the bracket with Joel Larson with Red Aggro against Stephen Neal with Red Aggro. Who would the red winner be? It would be the Swede, Joel, through to the semi-finals. Then we had Matt Sperling against Pat Cox. And once we hit game 3, it looked for all the world like Pat Cox was going to steamroller Sperling. Wasn't true. Matt Sperling made it through with a great comeback. Siege Rhinos, well, their exaggerated demise, you might say. They were seen in great number and to great effect in that game 3. So now we've gone into the top half of our bracket. Paul Jackson with Green Red Devotion, Stefan Berrios with Blue Red Ensoul Artifact. As we've just said, we saw one killer game for the Ensoul Artifact, but running with scissors didn't work out for Berrios, and it is Jackson, the Australian World Magic Cup captain, who will go to the semi-finals. So he now, having beaten one Blue-Red Ensoul Artifact deck, might be looking to face another. In our final quarterfinal, it is Kentaro Yamamoto with Abzan Megamorph against Mike Sigrist with the Blue-Red Ensoul Artifact. Let's take a look at Mike Sigrist for you. And these 2 players, Luis, have really developed the Player of the Year storyline. Let's take a look at Mike Sigrist if we can. He is here making it into his 2nd Pro Tour top 8, 32-year-old here, 112 lifetime pro points, over $30,000 in earnings, and now is when his good friend Eric Froelich starts to sweat, because if Mike Sigrist wins his quarterfinal and semi-final, he will be Player of the Year. If he loses this round or the semi-finals, it is Froelich who will get the job done and be Player of the Year, sitting in the booth waiting to see whether Sigrist will make him go one more round. So what is Sigrist playing? Well, as we said, this is our 2nd old versus new, if you like. Sigrist is on the Blue-Red Ensoul Artifact plan, but Luis, not everyone was here for the last round, so give us a sense of what Sigrist is trying to do.
His main plan is to put Ensoul Artifact on Ornithopter or Ghostfire Blade or Springleaf Drum on turn 2. Barring that, you still want to cast a big Hangerback Walker or a Whirler Rogue and then use Chief of the Foundry to make all your Thopters bigger.
A card like Whirler Rogue was something we saw. You said Hangerback Walker, obviously good. Fine. People were saying that at the pre-release and before in set reviews and so on. Whirler Rogue, it costs 4. It's a 2/2. It's double blue. It's all sorts of things that practically scream sealed deck. Is it the kind of card that you really sort of check the numbers over and over and over again before you start going, I'm going to put my Pro Tour fate in for Whirler Rogue?
It actually did not take very long. It's just, it's so good you get to play it, immediately use it, because the artifacts can be tapped regardless of whether they got played that turn to make 1 or even 2 creatures unblockable, and with a Chief of the Foundry out, it puts out 6 power and toughness. 4 of which is flying. It's actually a very efficient card.
Yeah, once you start putting it like that, oh yes, just the 6 power and toughness for 4 mana, 4 of which is flight. That does sound quite good. Something else that sounds quite good is that Sam Pardy, who is part of Team Sigrist, is ready to chat to Marshall Sutcliffe. So why don't we do that now?
Hey there, welcome to the Easy Chairs. I've got Sam Pardee with me. Sam, welcome. Are you comfortable?
Yeah,
you
pretty
look
good.
You always look comfortable.
Hey, yeah, having a good time.
So I wanted to pull you aside to talk a little bit about Siggy, as we call him, Mike Sigrist. Now, he's getting ready for his quarterfinal match right now. What kind of prep did you guys do in the last, say, 24 hours to get him ready?
We played a bunch last night, but honestly, Kentaro's deck is so similar to what the main deck we've been testing is, because Abzan's public enemy #1. We've played tons of games against Siege Rhino and almost exactly his list. So Siggy like didn't even really feel like he needed to play too much. You know, he played some games this morning, shake some rust off, got ready, and looked at his sideboard plans, and saw what we thought he was going to do, what we want to do to react to that, and got pretty ready to
Now,
go.
when it came time to choose what deck you were actually going to play for the tournament, I mean, if Obzon's public enemy #1, I have to assume that you guys have a reasonable matchup against the deck.
Yeah, we felt like it was pretty good. We played it a ton. It gets rougher post-board when they add Dramoka's Command. That card's really annoying because it can knock off your Ensoul and maybe like counter a Shrapnel Blast.
Ooh.
And that's a huge beating. That's usually like they save 10 life
10
or whatever.
10 damage, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What about for Sigrist as far as bigger picture things, right? We've been covering a lot of the World's races, the Player of the Year stuff, the World Championships. All of these different races are coming to a head here, and most of them have been settled. Players are sliding in on their pro player
there's
status.
a few left.
But there's a couple left here for Sigrist. Well, first, what is he playing for here?
So if he makes the finals, if he makes top 2, he will be the Player of the Year, which was not on any of our radars to begin with. Like, a month ago he won a Grand Prix, so before that he didn't have that many points. It was not like Ifro, who's just been having an insane year all year. Siggy sort of won a bunch at the beginning when he top 8'd Pro Tour Cons, and then now he has this, he won at the beginning and the end of the year.
Yeah.
Didn't do a lot.
And
in the
he
middle.
needs to make the finals to snatch that Player of the Year slot away from Eric. I'm curious though, you spent a lot of time with Siggy, and also you were testing with him and doing all this stuff over the last 24 hours when this has sort of come into focus for him. How much is it on his mind? Is this the kind of thing that he's aiming for, worried about, or
Well,
is he
I think
pretty chill?
because it sort of snuck up on him, so to speak. He didn't. I don't think he saw himself in the race until just now. So I think it hasn't really sunk in fully for him that he's actually.
That might
in
be
the
good.
race. Yeah. I think it's good. I think
You go into a
not as
match
much
thinking
pressure.
like there's it's already the Pro Tour. It's
Yeah.
already, playing in the top 8, and then you have to add in all this extra stuff about Player of the Year and all of that too. Siggy, is he one of the best players in the world before I let you go?
Absolutely. Owen said #1, and
I saw
about
that.
2 months ago maybe, and I think we might see, he's going to be #2 at least. We'll see if he gets to #1.
Mike Sigrist, one of the best players in the world in any case, is ready for his quarterfinal match. Let's head over to Rich Hagan at the news desk.
Thanks very much to Marshall with Sam Pardee there and Luis. It's so important to keep an even keel when there's so much on the line, especially as it's next round that Sigrist would play for absolutely everything in a sense. You could take your eye off the ball and forget that there's 2 out of 3 to play in the quarters.
Yeah, I had the privilege of playing for Player of the Year once in a Pro Tour top 8, actually at the Worlds 2011 that you mentioned, and I lost that that match, and lost Player of the Year. You can't think about it while you're playing, but man, it is something.
It really is. It really is something. Now, almost in the Player of the Year contest from the clouds is Kentaro Yamamoto, because we had 51 players who could have been Player of the Year this weekend. He was kind of number 46 maybe. He had 34 pro points coming into the weekend for the season, and he just kept on winning. 5-1 in draft, 8-1-1 in standard, but he was the pace setter throughout the tournament. 30 years of age, Platinum Pro, now for the 2nd year in a row, 140 lifetime pro points. Those lifetime earnings, they could go over $100,000 this weekend, because $40,000 is on the line for the winner. He cannot now be Player of the Year. That is a straight fight between Eric Froelich and Mike Sigrist, but boy did he give us an entertaining run along the way. Let's take a look at his deck then. It's Abzan Megamorph, and again, this is going to be our second quarterfinal, Luis, with very much the old versus the new. Walk us through the old.
This is still a Siege Rhino deck, but the biggest difference between this and something like what Matt Sperling is playing is the package of Satyr Wayfinder to mill Death Mist Raptors and find lands, and then Den Protectors, which when you unmorph them, brings back the Death Mist Raptor.
Right, so there's going to be a kind of circular feel physically to the deck. It's like it's in our hand, and now here we are. Here's a Wayfinder, now it's in the graveyard, now flip, now come back. There's very much that kind of circularity to the deck. Hopefully you'll see, in particular with our overhead camera, you'll get a sense of how that is all playing out. We saw Sigrist's Ensoul Artifact deck not get the job done in the last quarterfinal against, here's a Siege Rhino, and Sperling just managed it with earlier as well. Siege Rhinos were doing their thing. How do you see Siege Rhino stacking up in this quarterfinal against Sigrist?
Siege Rhino itself is actually not that important, just because a lot of the Ensoul's good draws just do massive chunks of damage. It's more the removal spells that can stop you, especially post-board like Jamoka's Command. Game 1, you still have, if you Ensoul anything but a Darksteel Citadel, something like Hero's Downfall is a big risk.
So is that something that we'll see Sigris doing? Is he likely to try only to Ensoul Artifact to Darksteel Citadel, or will he be forced to? This is the game plan. Let's see what happens.
If he doesn't have a Darksteel Citadel, he's still casting Ensoul.
Right.
If he does, he would rather cast it on the Citadel.
Okay. Well, the good news is that the players are ready. They are waiting for us. Are we about to crown Eric Froelich as Player of the Year? I know at least one of our commentators hopes so. Let's find out as Mike Sigris takes on Kentaro Yamamoto in the 4th quarterfinal of Pro Tour Magic Origins.